Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing. There I was on a July morning. I was looking for love with the strength of a new day dawning. At the sound of the first bird sings, I was leaving for home, with the storm and the night behind me. Oh yeah, yeah, and a road of my own.
I'm hearing
lovely.
A lot of little things in the background. I'm hearing a little bit of Mick. I'm hearing Trevor just every once in a while playing a couple notes ever so softly. There's a lot blended into this.
Yeah, and Ken's doing a whole different take on the original right there. All this little things he's putting in there while David's singing, and he's just going up and down and up and down and around what he's actually singing as far as the notes are concerned. It's really beautifully put together.
And I have to apologize. I don't know why I keep saying Trevor. I know that Trevor. This is Gary. You know, Trevor was in the band for so long that I think I'm just used to saying Trevor now.
Not a problem. We will let you do that and not say a word about it. It's okay.
You could hook. No, I'll hear about it. You could.
After 290 something episodes that you've done, I think you're entitled to a couple of mistakes in the name. It's okay.
I appreciate that. And thank you, all of you who were going to send hate mail and are now not going to do that. But, you know, it's just the blend of everything that's going on. I mean, you're talking stellar musicians that are on this stage together, and people who not only know how to construct a song and perform a song, but also know how to entertain with that song. And they're taking this to a whole new level.
The dynamics right now are insanely, they're so precise. You know, they're really a loud band, and they weren't very loud right now, but I'm sure they're loud enough that everybody in that place was on pins and needles listening to them. You know, yeah, very, very dynamic.
And I have to think that there is such an element of trust between them on stage to allow all of these things to happen and trust that they're all going to work within the context of the song. They're not going to get too crazy. They're going to make it fun and interesting, but I know I can jump in because I know the guys will be where they're supposed to be when it's my turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it comes with practice, and they practice an awful lot on the road. So yeah, you play 100 and something gigs a year, you'll get to this point. And these guys are great musicians regardless of how many gigs they were playing. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just like they've evolved to this. You know, I Live 79 is also, you know, same kind of thing where you have a live album that they've done. And I think this is just heads over tails over that one, as far as the performances are concerned.
Who was the vocalist on that?
John Lawton, I believe.
Okay. Interesting. I do love John Lawton's voice.
I should look that up before I sound like an ass.
Well, you'd be on the right show. I've always loved his voice, and I haven't really heard any of his stuff live with the band, but the studio stuff, what a great singer. I mean, he really was a great choice for the band. I think he was a little limiting for what the band could do because he didn't really get into the higher harmonies and things like that could have expanded the sound the way we're hearing it now. He was more like he could do it, but he stayed in he confined himself, I think, a little bit more.
John had an extremely powerful voice. I played with him a couple of times. Played in once in London up on stage, and a bunch of times at his house and stuff. And he had everything from a whisper to this incredibly loud, powerful, solid voice. And yeah. Yep. That's what it was. Yeah, I looked him up. But, I miss him. I miss all the things about him that he was. And I'm sure all the Heap guys and the fans that knew him and knew of him and listened to his music, I'll have the same feeling. We all miss him.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I didn't get the chance to meet him. I had reached out to him a couple of times for an interview, but when you reach out to an artist's website, it's very rarely the artist that actually controls it or even has anything to do with it. If I were to reach out like to the Uriah Heep website, expecting that, I'm going to get Mick Box, I'm not going to get Mick Box. I'm going to get you.
Right.
And so most of the time you're not even reaching the artist. You hope that they'll read what you wrote, or you hope that maybe the right person will pass it along. Unfortunately, I never heard back. I don't blame him because I don't know if he even knew I was writing him. I don't know if he knew about the show or anything at all. All I can say is I would have loved to have chatted with him. I think he was a phenomenal vocalist. From the first time I heard him on the Butterfly Ball, through all the songs that I covered through Heap, just an amazing vocalist. I think it would have been great to talk to him, but at least we have his music to enjoy.
That's true. He was a good guy. He came to one of our Heap conventions that we had, I think into maybe 1999 in Myrtle Beach.
Oh,
John
wow.
And his wife came in as guests of us. And he played with us. He played pool with us the night before and party with us the night of the convention. And it was a great time.
Oh, very nice.
He was a really good dude.
Oh, I bet. Now, there was a perfect example of what I was talking about with the trust that you would have on stage. Listening to what Gary was playing, he's all over the place in this chorus, right? But when the notes come in on the beat, he's where he's supposed to be.
He's right there.
Especially that first low note. I mean, that, he's going to deliver it. He can go off as much as he wants, but he's where he's supposed to be at those key moments.
For all you guitar players out there who are trying to play this is not one of your C, D, and G songs. This is F. This is E flat, G minor, A flat, and B flat. And then it's E flat, G minor, A flat, and B flat. It's black keys on the keyboard everywhere, and so it's not one of your natural. That's a good, good musicians playing any key. It really doesn't matter. But I'm just telling you, it's not one of those simple put together songs. It's in the chord structures everybody is used to playing in. Maybe that's why it sounds so good, because it's in C minor versus, let's say, A minor. So,
right. Yeah, the progression sounds different to your ears than it would in more standard key.
And it's slower too. So it's lower and it's slower. And I just think that it's really done the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I very much agree. It's almost like they're having a competition of who can do the most interesting fill-in.
I don't know. I don't know how to explain. I don't know how to respond to that. I was too busy listening. They're building this ramp that's getting more intense and more intense and more intense. And it hasn't gotten even halfway how intense it's going to get in about a minute. So I don't know what they're doing. They're just like rocking and rolling, and that probably sounds really stupid. It's just a very intense part. The chord sequence is just like, it's like this ascending track to greatness coming up. That's the only way I can put it.
But I could see, because they do this song at every show, or I imagine every show, I could see them saying, you know what, we're going to have a little battle tonight. I'm going to blow you off stage. And the other one's like, well, I'm going to blow you off stage. And then the next thing you know, they're putting in crazier and crazier fill-ins just to keep it interesting between them.
Well, yeah, Mick's doing that. I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, Mick's doing that. He's got things going on in there. He's trilling and filling stuff in and hitting the wah, getting as loud as he can get, and trying to edge in where it needs to have a little spot closed up.
Yeah,
and yeah.
And Lee Kerslake is not being shy at this point of filling in either.
The drums sound really good on this. They're not boomy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not overbearing. They're in the back a little bit, but I like it that way for this song.
Yeah, they said the toms are nice and dry and crisp.
Yeah,
and really cut through well. The kick and the snare balance is perfect for me. Absolutely perfect. And you know how critical I am about that.
Well, when you see videos of them doing this, and he was like really pounding on those things. And in this recording, they're back a bit, which I think is probably a good choice, because the song is very intense right now, and it's getting more intense. And there's going to be an awful lot going on. So maybe what he's doing is, when they mixed it this way, maybe they're doing it on purpose this way. So all the sonic space isn't taken up by something, because it has some air in it left, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's always good. I mean, you want to have at least a little bit of breathing room for when you really want to push it.
And and the organ's got this swishing thing going on as usual with Ken on this album, and that's got its own space. That adds a lot to the mystique of this song and the mystique of this album, I think. And that's always prevalent. And I think that they did a really good job the way they put together.
Now, was he filling in a little bit, layering with the Moog on that in the beginning of that last passage?
The movie's just starting to come in. It's doing one of these. So he's just starting to do that with one hand and doing all the stuff he was normally doing with his right hand.
Right.
So it's just starting to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I heard a little inflection of that, so I wanted to be sure.
The best is yet to come.
Well, let's get right to it. Now, the sound that Mick is getting right there, it's changed again. It's kind of almost a raspy vibrato.
He's got the wah. He's got the wah going, and he's just, halfway up the neck on a lot of it, rather than really high or real low. It's like right in the middle. That's where it's most powerful anyways. And I think he just got that thing just cranking.
Yeah, he's really dialed in a very good sound here. And again, very true to the original recording.
What I find in this section of the song that always drew me in so heavily was the fact that if you think back about 20 seconds ago, they started with C minor up on the, and that's all you hear on one side of your headphones or one side of your speakers, right? And everything else is going on under that. And Ken hasn't really changed that. He's like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just staying there. If you were to back up about 20 seconds, I don't want you to do it, but that's where he is. And Mick's doing his thing underneath that, and Gary's running around doing his thing, at least pounding on the drums. David is just screaming with those super high falsettos that are always on key. It's a great part of the song, and it's really intense because that C is never leaving. So think about that.
That's very interesting.
That's why I find it so emotive, because that thing just never stops. And the Moog is, and it's just doing that along with the organ. It's really a cool part of the song, is what I'm trying to say.
It is. And I mean, to think about doing that in a studio is one thing, because you can do them on separate tracks. You can do, independent takes or whatever. But to do that live, and that's some really, really solid independence for a keyboard player.
And when he was ended up doing all kinds of stuff on both hands at the same time and never clashed. Because the Moog was doing one thing because that's how the record was, but it wasn't the same as the record was. And the organ's doing another thing, which is very close to what the record did, but much more intense, because this version of the song is more intense. And it all just gels. Right there, it's just gelling for me. Just like, probably the best part of the song, I think, is like, for me, is like right now.
Yeah, it really, everything is just has been a great lead up to this point, and this is a really powerful payoff.
Yeah, this is a real powerful passage. Yeah, I agree. And what's it got? About a minute left?
About 2. Now, for the drummers out there, during the spooky part, we'll call it, Lee, at that last passage, the beginning of what we were just listening to, he was hitting a crash cymbal on every snare, which is a little more than he normally does, but it's not uncommon for him to hit a snare and a crash at the same time. When it switched back to the main riff, now he's hitting the crash on the kick, and he's hitting a more open hi-hat on the snare, and it creates a really interesting sound, because it's not a consistent sound. It changes every half of measure. And I really found that interesting. I liked the way he played that there.
It changed the whole feeling of what they were doing. And they didn't really change a whole lot in volume or anything. He did.
Yeah.
And it really opened it up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Really did. If there were any part of this whole song that we've listened to that I could say really proves what a great feat of mix engineering this is, it would be the end of this song. The balance between the guitar and keys, the drums with the extra weight of riding the crash cymbals. I mean, everything was in balance. Everything was perfectly audible. It's rare to find a live album that's mixed this well.
I think this is probably the best live album I've ever heard, other than the James Gang live at Carnegie Hall, because that's a guitar player's album. But this is probably the best live album I've ever heard.
I hate to sound cliche, but I will say Made in Japan by Deep Purple is a very well mixed album. But the engineer, I mean, it was Martin Birch, and he recorded it also. So it's not surprising that would be a good sounding album. but usually there's a little bit of muddiness. There's overtones you don't want to hear. Things come in and out of phase, but everything I've heard on this album so far, and we're 5 songs in, I don't have really any engineering complaints at all.
Yeah, and sometimes it's cool when they make a mistake, and they'll hit the wrong note when they're tuning up, or you'll hear one of the speakers cut out and they come back because they were fooling around getting their shit together.
Yeah,
live. This doesn't have a whole lot of that. So there's a couple things in there, but it just seems like it was a studio live performance. It's so perfect. It's so good. But it wasn't the studio. It was live, and it was done 2 days in a row. So what can I say? It's just that good.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And I have to say, I really like this version of the song. I mean, I've always loved this song. It's been one of my favorite Heep songs. It's one I've listened to many times. But to feel it with a whole different breath of life in it is really spectacular.
I'll tell you that I think, and this is just my opinion, of course, but the end of this song, that you said the part that was so intense, the perfect ending to a perfect song. Ken is staying on one note for awful long time. And the rest of the song built up to the ending. He never left that note. It was either on the synth or on the organ or both at the same time, depending on what he was doing. But that note never left. That high C never left. That, right? So everybody's doing it. And the other best song to me on this album, which is Circle of Hands, ends almost the same way. And when we do that one, I'll show you what I think makes that song so intense at the end, because it's the same type of thing. They build up to this amazing crescendo, and then it just like explodes and ends. It's really, really well put together.
Well, I look forward to that. And of course, I'm not going to listen to it, but I will. I will hear it when we hear it. But that sounds like fun. I have to say, I really love the way that they structured this song. I mean, they really did a great job of keeping to the original, but making it alive and not so static that they had to be like, well, this is how it was on the album. We need to play it so close to this. I mean, they honored it, but they made it a new song.
Now, you've seen them live now, and I'll say in deference to the current lineup, it's every bit as good as this. In a live setting, when you hear them play this, it's incredibly intense.
Yeah.
Phil does all the right stuff, and Davey Rimmer does all the right stuff, and Mick, everybody's doing everything just the way it's supposed to be. It's just different. Mm-hmm. It's nowhere less intense. This was this version, and what they do now is their version now. I don't have any problem at all with the way they're doing it now versus the way they did it for this album. It's just a different band, it's different personnel written a different way. But it's just such a great tune.
It really is. I mean, I think if I were to be asked, what are your 10 songs that I should listen to if I want to get into Uriah Heep, I would be very tempted to put this one on that list, because I think it really encompasses so much of what the band was about in this era that I don't know how I wouldn't pick it.
Well, I think of Uriah Heep in two different veins. I think of them as studio albums and live albums,
Mm-hmm.
And bootlegs, to me, good bootlegs, sometimes are really priceless, because it wasn't supposed to be, anything that was planning on being released. So it wasn't the kind of thing that they thought it was so fantastic that somebody wanted to release a version of it. So there's lots of them out there. And I always tend to like the live stuff better. That's why I like this album so much, because they're my favorite band, of course, with my favorite live album, of course, and the stuff they do now in live, it's still my favorite band, and it's still my favorite versions of everything. For this era is the best thing I think I've ever heard. Deep Purple and Zeppelin, all those guys in the big four, no one did July Morning but Uriah Heep, and nobody does Gypsy, nobody does Circle of Hands, and Tears in My Eyes, all that stuff that's on this. Nobody else does those songs, so these are our songs.
Right.
It's just a great way to have music.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right about the bootlegs. And the thing is, when you're doing a record company planned live album and you're going to record 2 or 3 nights and you pick the best versions of each song so that you make the greatest compilation, you can do that. But the bootlegs are this is everything that happened on one night, good or bad, live. Here's what it was. It's raw and it's real. And I like that too. I mean, I get the idea of having a polished live album, but the thing about live music is that it's live. Anything can happen.
I don't know if you all your fans are aware of this, Scott, but for a while there, about 10 years, 8 years ago, you're right, he was releasing what they called the live bootleg series. And they were just concerts that were and they were recorded live off the board while he did it. And you could actually pick up a CD at the end of the show. You could buy a CD, you would go to a certain place and they had pressed them or copied them or something. And if you waited long enough, you could get one.
Wow.
And they also you could buy them. And it was called the bootleg series. I think there were 6 of them, but those are really cool too, because those are live performances. Any mistakes are in them. It was cool stuff. I wish they would do that again. I wish all bands would do that.
I like the idea of that. I like the idea of bands being human. And like we've talked about, I'm not a big fan of let's correct everything so that it's all perfectly in time. And, if the drummer didn't hit the snare 100% the way he did on the other ones, we got to fix that. And let music be made by human beings. And that's one thing I do love about seeing a band live is we're just seeing who they are in that moment.
Yeah. Mick Box is my favorite guitar player, just bar none. And when he does a live, like Look at Yourself, when they're bouncing off, when he and now Russell are bouncing off each other, doing their little medley together, it's so intense. And he's such a good guitar player. And you don't catch that unless you're listening to a great live recording or seeing him live, because the studio versions of things, I think, aren't the same type of thing. They're polished. They sound great. The songs are great. Everything's great about them. But when I want to hear Mick, I'll find something that he did live and just go and just dwell on that, because that's the way I think of him, as a live guitarist in a live band playing to fans that really want to hear him play. And he gets off on that.
Well, yeah. And the first time I saw them, when they did The Magician's Birthday, just that little part with Mick and Russell, I was just blown away by how good they sounded together.
Yeah.
I mean, they're completely independent of each other, but they're supporting each other at the same time. And it just sounded amazing.
They're absolutely hooked together. I agree. I've seen them do a bunch of stuff, not that, specifically, but I've seen them do a bunch of things where Phil's bouncing off of Mick and they're bouncing off of Davey, and he's coming out, and it's just like Russell's in the middle of this, and when they get done screwing around with each other, it's the song again. Mm-hmm. But all the things that led up to that those intricate little things that ended up being the song again is what makes them so good live.
Absolutely. And they're a very cohesive unit on stage. They're all aware of each other. They're all working together to make a great song. I've seen so many bands that they're off in their own little world on stage. They don't acknowledge the other musicians. They all seem to be playing their own thing. And I don't get a charge from that. I like seeing a band be a band instead of 5 or 6 individuals up there playing their parts.
I agree.
The unity I felt from those guys, both times I've seen them, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So hopefully you'll see him again.
Hopefully I'm counting on it.
Probably not too long from now either.
That would be great. I mean, we're already, a third of the way?
The album gets released and they tour to promote it. They'll come to the States and you'll see him and I'll see him. Maybe we'll see him together. Well,
from what I've heard, the biggest issue right now is just insurance. Who's going to insure bands coming to the States right now with COVID still? Right. Now, I don't know what the numbers are for COVID, but I've heard that Nevada is one of the 6 states where the numbers are still going up. Not surprising. We're a tourist town. So, right. One of the biggest in the world.
Hopefully they can work through it.
Yeah, it's going to get better. And, I think Mick was hoping for, maybe early 2023 for them to hit the States again. If that turns out to be the case, then great. Whenever they come here, obviously I'll go see them. But, I just hope that this whole thing gets under control and we can just start enjoying life and seeing our favorite bands again, because it's kind of tough as our bands get older. And, they've already had to cancel a lot of shows. A lot of the bands have, because members come down with COVID or the venue has some issue or whatever because of it. So, I just hope that people continue to be smart and stop thinking that this is over and just be cautious and let's get back to where we want to be.
Let's get back to where we want to be. Absolutely.
That's
I agree.
the preachiest I've been on this show. I think
That's
since
great.
I started.
I like that.
Well, it's because I want to see the band.
This has been a public service announcement. This is good.
That's
I
right.
like it.
The more you know.
That's right. That's more you know.
Well, Dave, next week we've got Tears in My Eyes.
All right. Great guitar song. Great guitar song.
It really is. That's one of the first Uriah Heep songs that I learned as a drummer.
Really?
Don't know why. I think my brother wanted to play it on guitar because it's a fun guitar song. And
Right,
so I think that was one of the first ones that we had learned to play. And I've always really liked that song. It's a quick vocal song. There's not much to it. But again, it's like just a little bit has a lot of punch.
Super slide guitar work, right?
Yes. And I assume that's Ken, right?
That's Ken. Yes. He was a great slide player. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
He was
All
really
right.
something.
Well, we did the song in just a little over an hour, believe it or not, for a 12-minute song. That's not too bad for us.
Not bad at all.
So I'll have this broken up into a couple of episodes so you guys can take smaller bites without having to worry about losing your place. Dave, as always, thank you for joining me for another episode of this live album that I said I would never do. And I'm really glad we are.
As always, my pleasure to talk with you and walk through songs with you.
Excellent. Well, we'll do it again next week.
All right, man. I'll be here.
Cheers, you guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!